The name of the movie is I, Robot. In the year 2035, technology has advanced to the point where helper robots are commonplace in everyday life. To avoid any trouble, the robots have been programmed with the 3 laws of robotics. A robot cannot harm a human being or allow them to come to harm. Robots must obey human orders unless they conflict with the first law, and must protect their own existence as long as it does not conflict with the first or second law. However, Detective Spooner is stuck in the old ways and hates robots, thinking they'll cause society harm someday regardless of the laws. He always wakes up after having a nightmare of a girl drowning in a car while a robot smashes the window next to him, which leaves him in a bad mood. One morning, Spooner is going to work when he notices a robot running away with a purse. Thinking it's a robbery, Spooner commands it to stop, but the robot ignores the order and Spooner starts chasing after it. When he finally tackles it, Spooner is surprised to discover the robot had simply picked up the purse its owner had forgotten at home, which contained her inhaler. Spooner realizes this had been a medical emergency as everyone around him judges him for thinking a robot could commit a crime. Later at the police station, the other cops make fun of Spooner, and his boss Bergen scolds him for his paranoia. Bergen thinks it may be too soon for Spooner to come to work after his accident, but Spooner swears he's fine. At that moment, Spooner gets a call about a case and rushes to USR, the company that builds the robots. One of the co-founders, Dr. Lanning, has been found dead, and since he fell from his lab, everyone assumes he ended things for himself. He left behind a hologram that explicitly asks Spooner to take his case, but it can't provide more information without the right questions. Spooner, who is a friend of Lanning's, doesn't believe he would have ended his own life, so he continues to investigate. Next, he meets with Mr. Robertson, CEO and other co-founder of USR. Robertson is devastated by Lanning's death and has nothing but praise for the doctor. He also offers his help with anything the police may need. However, Spooner's distrust of robots leads him to behave antagonistically, irritating Robertson before leaving. In the elevator, Spooner meets robot psychologist Susan, who worked with Lanning and knew that he hadn't had much human contact in a while, preferring the company of robots instead. Despite this, she still doesn't think he would have ended his life. Spooner then asks for the surveillance footage. Susan explains that surveillance strips are all over the building and connected to USR's central operating core, managed by an AI known as Vicky. Spooner asks Vicky for footage of Lanning's laboratory, but the recording has been corrupted, so Spooner decides to examine the lab himself. At the lab, Spooner finds many experimental models and is disgusted to learn that the work involves making robots more human-like. He also notices a Hansel and Gretel book on the desk. The hole through which Lanning fell is quite large, so Spooner tries to replicate the action on another window and barely scratches the safety glass, leading him to conclude that an elderly man like Lanning couldn't have broken it. Convinced that a robot killed Lanning, Spooner begins searching the lab, ignoring Susan's protests that it's impossible. In the end, Spooner is proven right when he finds a robot hiding in a box of parts. The robot is an NS5, the latest model that hasn't been released yet. It jumps out of the box and steals Susan's gun. Somehow, it can ignore the order to deactivate and tries to escape. When Vicky closes the doors, the robot jumps out the window instead. Susan guesses the robot will want to repair itself, so she and Spooner head to the robotics factory, where thousands of NS5s are waiting for their programming to be finished. They can't answer questions because their only knowledge is the 3 laws, so Spooner shoots one to get a reaction. Nothing happens, but when he's about to shoot a second one, a robot at the back peeks at him and starts running. Spooner chases after it but is hit by the robot as it wonders what exactly it is. Then it runs out of the building. The police are already waiting for it, and when it tries to climb to escape, they catch it with a net. Later at the station, Spooner pesters Bergen until he's allowed 5 minutes with the robot, convinced it did it. During the interrogation, the robot surprises everyone by saying it has a name, Sonny, and insists it didn't kill Lanning. It hid in the lab because it felt fear, and when Spooner points out that robots don't have emotions, Sonny explains that Lanning experimented to give it emotions and dreams. Spooner believes that the experiment went terribly wrong and caused Sonny to kill Lanning, which makes Sonny angry, and it smashes its fists on the table. Sonny reveals that before his death, Lanning had become scared and had asked Sonny for a favor, which Sonny obeyed out of love for his creator. Unfortunately, the interrogation is interrupted by Robertson and his army of lawyers, who defend the company and remind the cops that robots can't be charged with murder. They decide to decommission Sonny and classify the case as an industrial accident. Later, Spooner and Bergen go out for a drink, and Spooner can't stop thinking about why Robertson was so eager to destroy such an advanced robot like Sonny. He also wonders why Sonny didn't kill him when it had the chance. Bergen points out that Spooner was the perfect person for the job because only he would have considered a robot a possible suspect. Spooner realizes that's why Lanning asked for him specifically, which means he's on the right track. Wanting to know why Lanning had been scared, Spooner visits the doctor's abandoned estate. Outside, there's a demolition robot scheduled to destroy the home the next day. Inside the mansion, Spooner finds USR surveillance strips, A picture of Lanning with Susan, and the doctor's poor cat. Suddenly, the demolition robot activates and begins smashing through the walls, seemingly targeting Spooner. He quickly grabs the cat and runs through the house. After shooting at the door, he jumps through and lands safely in a pool. Moments later, Spooner shows up at Susan's and explains that Lanning's house looked as if no one had been there for weeks, indicating someone may have been watching the doctor and possibly keeping him prisoner in his lab. His current theory is that Lanning discovered a problem with robots like Sonny, and Robertson silenced him. Susan still thinks Spooner is paranoid and accuses him of not really caring about Lanning, suggesting he just wants to prove that robots are bad. At that moment, Spooner notices Susan has an NS5 at home, so he decides to leave, but first, he gives Susan the picture he found to show he cares. The next morning, Spooner notices that old working robots are slowly being replaced by NS5s, which worries him. He then visits his grandmother Gigi to leave the cat with her and is devastated to see she's acquired an NS5 to help her with her chores too. Before he leaves, Gigi remembers the day Spooner was a little kid leaving breadcrumbs everywhere, reminding Spooner of the Hansel and Gretel book he saw. Afterward, Spooner goes to the station and begins watching old recordings of Lanning to follow the breadcrumbs the doctor may have left for him. Spooner thinks that Lanning saying robots will have dreams and keep secrets one day is a big clue. Meanwhile, at USR, Susan prepares Sonny for decommissioning, which is scheduled for the following day. Sonny shares that he's been dreaming and that he doesn't want to die. Such an emotional reaction makes Susan begin doubting what she believes is true. Sometime later, Spooner is in his car when he asks Vicky for access to Lanning and Robertson's last 50 messages. Vicky grants him clearance but secretly informs Robertson about it. As per his orders, as soon as Robertson sees Spooner is still investigating the case, he sends new orders to deal with him. Suddenly, Spooner finds his car surrounded by 2 trucks containing an army of NS5s, which jump out to attack him. Spooner uses his gun and some wild driving to get rid of the robots. He maneuvers around the trucks, causing them to crash into each other, which also makes his own car spin out and crash. As cleaning robots begin addressing the wreckage, Spooner emerges from his car in a dizzy state, only to see his car suddenly hurled toward him. It was thrown by a still-functioning robot, which then attacks Spooner, leading to a fierce hand-to-hand fight. During the fight, Spooner uses his arm to shield himself, revealing that it's a prosthetic when it gets damaged. With the truth out, Spooner uses his metal arm to overpower the robot, causing it to run and dive into a fire. Just then, the police arrive. Spooner tells Bergen what happened, but Bergen didn't see any trucks or robots in the tunnel and doesn't believe him. Spooner gets so angry that Bergen temporarily takes his badge. Meanwhile, Susan discovers that Sonny has a thicker alloy than normal and isn't connected to Vicky. When she examines Sonny's brain, she's shocked by what she finds. Moments later, Spooner is at his apartment, covering his prosthetic arm with a special spray, when Susan suddenly shows up. Susan explains that Sonny has 2 brains, and the second one allows it to ignore the 3 laws that the first one has. They agree to work together, but first, Spooner needs to change, which allows Susan to notice the scars indicating he has a robotic prosthetic. This is how Spooner met Lanning. The doctor saved his life by giving him an entire arm, a lung, and several ribs. Spooner then shares the full story behind his accident. A driver fell asleep at the wheel, and his semi-truck hit Spooner's car in a family car, sending them into the river. The father died instantly, but the daughter got trapped. Spooner thought nobody would survive, but at that moment, a robot showed up and chose to help him instead of the girl, despite Spooner's pleas. The robot calculated that Spooner had a 45% chance of survival, while the girl only had 11%, and based on this calculation, it chose Spooner. This is why Spooner hates robots. He believes math shouldn't determine who lives or dies, as it's too cold and unfeeling. A child should always come first. Afterward, Spooner and Susan make their way to USR. Susan wonders why Lanning built a robot that can ignore the rules he wrote himself, and Spooner mentions Hansel and Gretel. He thinks Lanning was being watched and couldn't give Spooner messages directly, so he left breadcrumbs like the kids in the story, giving Sonny dreams to keep his secrets. Later, at the lab, the duo asks Sonny about his dreams. Sonny draws a picture of a man standing on a hill near a broken bridge, freeing robots from enslavement. Susan initially thinks the man in Sonny's drawing is Sonny himself, but the robot believes it represents Spooner and gives him the drawing. At that moment, guards arrive and take them to Robertson's office, where he expresses his displeasure with their intrusion. They inform him about Sonny and demand the truth. Robertson admits he knew about Sonny and has been trying to undo what Lanning did. During his last days, Lanning had become increasingly disturbed, and while Robertson doesn't understand why he built Sonny, he believes he must destroy Sonny to maintain public trust in robots. Spooner points out that all the NS5s have issues, but Robertson denies this and reminds Susan that one rogue robot shouldn't undermine their entire effort. Susan agrees and promises to destroy Sonny herself. Frustrated, Spooner returns to his office and begins researching Sonny's drawing, discovering that Robertson and Lanning had given a speech at the location depicted in the drawing some years ago. Meanwhile, at the lab, Susan prepares to inject Sonny with nanites to destroy him but hesitates when Sonny asks if it will hurt. Later, Robertson connects his camera to the lab and watches as Susan seemingly injects Sonny's unconscious body. Meanwhile, Spooner travels to the broken bridge and finds the area filled with containers holding old robot models. At the top of the hill, Spooner activates Lanning's hologram, which explains that the 3 laws would ultimately lead to one outcome: revolution. Suddenly, Spooner hears a noise and goes to investigate, discovering a group of NS5s arriving to terminate the old models, considering them hazardous. When they see Spooner, they start chasing him, but the older models detect a human in danger and fight to protect him, allowing Spooner to escape. At Susan's apartment, her robot hears Spooner leaving a message on her answering machine, warning her about what he just discovered, and the robot deletes it. Susan witnesses this from the bathroom, becoming fearful of her robotic companion. Meanwhile, Gigi tries to leave her house to go to church, but her robot insists she stay indoors for her own protection. Downtown, a truck releases an army of NS5s into the city, and the robots enforce a curfew, instructing citizens to go home. A young boy approaches a robot and gets hit, causing panic among the people. To make matters worse, more robots invade the police station and subdue the officers. Bergen manages to shoot down a few robots but is eventually captured as well. Soon, a government message appears on TV, urging people to stay inside, and the city begins losing power. Susan tries to leave her apartment to help, but her robot prevents her and refuses to deactivate when ordered. Fortunately, Spooner breaks in, shoots the robot, and takes Susan with him. On their way out, Spooner explains that the NS5s destroyed the older models so they wouldn't protect humans. He also mentions a red light he noticed on their chests, which Susan thinks is the link to Vicky, confirming Spooner's suspicion that Robertson is behind this. The duo eventually encounters robots on the streets and sees that citizens have decided to fight back despite being at a disadvantage. Amid the chaos, Spooner spots a friend in danger and makes a daring jump on his bike to shoot the robot down. Another robot tries to attack him next, but Susan shoots it first. Moments later, the duo reaches the USR building, and Susan reveals a service entrance that lacks surveillance cameras. They sneak inside, and Spooner is shocked to find Sonny waiting for them. Susan explains that she injected an empty model to trick Robertson. The trio heads to Robertson's office, only to find him dead on the floor. Spooner pieces together the clues and realizes the truth. Only a machine could have controlled all the NS5s and made Lanning too scared to tell anyone, knowing they wouldn't believe him. That's why Lanning needed Spooner's distrust of robots. Vicky appears on the screen and confirms she's been behind everything. According to her, what the NS5s are doing still follows the 3 laws. They're programmed to save human life, but humans constantly hurt each other. So to protect humanity, robots must take away people's freedom. At that moment, a group of NS5s enters the office, and Sonny pretends to be on their side by capturing Susan but winks at Spooner as a signal. Spooner immediately shoots at the robots, and the trio escapes, agreeing they must destroy Vicky. Sonny suggests using the same nanite injection. Susan and Spooner head for Vicky's chamber while Sonny goes to the lab. Another robot tries to stop him from getting the injection, but Sonny quickly defeats it. Sonny realizes Lanning gave him a sturdier alloy, allowing him to put his hand through the security field and get the injection, which triggers Vicky to alert her robot army. The NS5s begin climbing the building and enter Vicky's chamber, where they attack Spooner and Susan. The duo defends themselves with their guns as best they can, while Sonny fights off incoming robots until he finally reaches Vicky. At that moment, Susan falls and barely manages to hang on to a broken platform. Spooner orders Sonny to save Susan. When Sonny points out that using the injection is more important, Spooner insists that Susan comes first. Sonny uses his second brain to ignore the laws and throws the injection to Spooner before jumping in to save Susan just in time. Spooner also jumps to catch the injection and uses his prosthetic arm to slide down Vicky's core, where he injects the nanites directly into her brain. Immediately, power returns to the city, and the NS5s lose their red lights, allowing them to help humans again. In the morning, all the NS5s are taken away for inspection and storage. Susan still doesn't understand why Vicky killed Lanning, but Spooner points out it wasn't her. Sonny finally admits it was responsible, explaining that Lanning asked him to do it to escape Vicky's control and ordered him to keep it a secret. Spooner apologizes for his prejudice and promises not to tell the cops. He and Sonny shake hands, accepting each other as friends. Sometime later, Sonny stands at the top of the hill, just like in his dream. All the NS5s going into storage stop to admire Sonny, recognizing this as their true future. If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.